Thanks, Chair. Thanks to our two members of the European Court of Auditors and to both commissioners for being here today. Ms. Virkkunen, I have some questions around the funding of spyware. I myself was a target last year, an attack with Candiru. We've had an entire special committee in this House in the last mandate with a number of recommendations. A number of colleagues have been targeted, both from third countries, but also from within the European Union. So given that spyware in the wrong hands can be used for quite severe human rights violations, violations of EU values and so on, I think that funding spyware or the use of spyware is a quite sensitive area, right? And I would like to ask a bit how the Commission looks at this and controls and makes sure that the funding we provide for spyware is not misused or is not having a vastly negative impact. So there is one example of Freund systems. So this is a company that has received 15 million euros from the European Union, and during the funding period, Amnesty International found that the company was supplying communications interception gear to South Sudan. Another NGO, Privacy International, found that the company was supplying systems capable of tapping phone and internet traffic to Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. I mean, are these kind of things, I mean, does that then have any kind of impact on the contract? I understand for a company to be listed on the EDIS system, there has to be a court conviction basically in an EU court. But when countries, when these kind of companies or beneficiaries of EU funds contribute to human rights violations in third countries, does that have any kind of impact? And how do you actually monitor that beneficiaries of EU funds, like these spyware companies, are in full compliance with human rights and EU values while they receive EU funds?
Thank you very much, Honourable Rapporteur. This is, of course, a very important topic, and I had also personally privileged to be a substitute member on this PEGA committee in the Parliament, so I'm very aware of the work the committee was carrying out and also the challenges we are facing with the new technologies. I think it's important to underline that the Commission is not funding projects which concern products and technologies whose use, development or production is prohibited by international law. And we know also that when we have EU funding in direct management, it's awarded of the basis of open calls always, and the call sets out the objective together with a very clear scope of eligible activities. And all the applications for these calls, they undergo also a very strict assessment and evaluation before any agreement can be signed. And this includes also an ethical review by a multidisciplinary team of ethical experts. So this is a very important part of when we are choosing the projects. And there are clear rules here. All contracts which are involving EU funding must ensure full respect of applicable EU legislation, including accountability, also transparency and sound financial management, and aimed at protecting the financial interests of EU, of course. And this also includes avoiding misapplication of EU funds for purposes other than those on which they were originally granted. And as a matter of fact, any costs declared which are not necessary for and directly related for the implementation of the action will be rejected here. And also during when we have implementation of different projects, the beneficiary is also bound by a number of contractual provisions. For example, the obligation to respect the highest ethical standards and applicable law when implementing the action. And failure of this respect, these obligations can result in various contractual measures, including also suspension of grant agreement or payments and grant agreement termination. And like you said, that it's also important, of course, on general level, that we are also making sure that these spyware technologies, they are not going to wrong hands. And already in the European Union, cyber surveillance items, they are subject to strict import and export conditions in line in EU and also with the modernized dual-use regulation. And also in coming years, in 27, we will have our new Cyber Resilience Act, which will set also strict cybersecurity requirements of products entering to the EU markets. And also inside in the European Union, now we are implementing our European Media Freedom Act to make sure that we can protect journalists against illegal use of spyware. And all the time in the member states, we are actively monitoring yearly basis the issue of each member states when it comes to use of spyware as well, making the necessary recommendations as a part of annual rule of law report exercise. So this is very important priority also for us to make sure that illegal use of spyware, that if there is that kind of cases of wrongdoing, they are investigated in member states. That also, we want to make sure that we are not funding that kind of projects with European funding.
Thanks. We would like to get a full overview of how much EU funding went to which spyware company, actually including some details that we cannot just get on the financial transparency system. You referred to that in one of your replies to written questions. So let me ask you if you could please provide us in writing with an overview of all commercial spyware and surveillance company which received EU funds between 2021 and 24, ideally broken down by year, company, funding stream, and then also the decision-making authority that would benefit our discharge exercise, if that would be possible. I see that you agree.